Hello, everyone. Welcome to Question Everything, a podcast all about learning from the successes and the failures of those who dared to, well, question everything. This podcast is part interview, part therapy, and a little Price is Right. We even have our own game board stacked with questions that'll make even the most successful CMOs sweat. I'm your host, Ashley Walters, Chief Development Officer and partner at Curiosity. On today's episode, I sit down with Luna Malbroux, the founder and Chief Vibe Officer of Joy Channel. Today, we explore how humor can open our hearts and minds to difficult topics like racism, social injustice, gender equality, and so much more. On this episode, she shares how one of the best ways to partner with marginalized communities is putting into practice the mantra, nothing about us without us. Why drag queens and burlesque dancers are the best teachers of equitable business practices. How to know if you're performing or practicing equity. Trust us, most brands aren't very good actors. And why it's not dangerous to be a comedian right now. Really? They're just lazy. You don't have to be a performer or a DEI expert to get something meaningful out of this episode. In fact, you just have to be human. Let's get started. Hello, welcome to the Question Everything podcast. Today I'm sitting down with Luna Malbroux. She's the founder and chief vibe officer of Joy Channel, and she's an experienced facilitator, a speaker, and a leader on creating inclusive spaces. Luna's most notably a self-described joy evangelist who believes that fostering belonging, communication, connection, and fun, yes, I said fun, is the missing link in many approaches to diversity, equity, justice, and inclusion initiatives. She's also the award-winning comedian, writer, musician, and public intellect whose work has been featured in KQED, NPR, The Atlantic, PBS, Glamour Magazine, and so many more. Her work on using culture to build a more connected and liberated world is fueled by her passion for performing as a member of her band, The Moon and the Man. So welcome, Luna, to Question Everything.
Thank you, Ashley. What a what a lovely, warm welcome. And I love my bio. I just want to clarify that my music has not won any awards yet.
Not yet.
But I am an award-winning performer.
I love that. Well, just reading your bio, I mean, girl, first of all, you're busy, which I can't wait to unpack, like how you manage all of these big things that you're doing in your life, but your energy is it is like contagious, I guess would be the best way to describe it. So normally I would ask our guests, how are you? But I'm not going to ask you that. I want to know today, like, what's your energy level? What are you holding on to today? Tell me about the Luna that's before me right now.
I love that question. Thank you so much for creating this space. And I like to question everything too. So I'm so excited to be a guest. And today, today I am just feeling super open and just like I'm holding a lot as I always am. But I think we all are in many different ways. I don't find myself to be special and unique to that. I think I just like name it and own it in ways that some people are like,
just call it out.
I lean into it. But yeah, I'm just feeling really open. I'm feeling really ready to constantly detach myself from concepts of who I thought I was, right? So even in hearing a bio, it's just like, this is what you've done. It's just like, that's what I've done. That may not be what I do in the future, right? So I'm holding that level of openness today and in this conversation.
I appreciate that. So we met, I think, back in 2020. And Curiosity, which is the agency that I work for, we looked to you and your company to help us solve some pretty big challenges. We wanted a fresh perspective on our HR policies and how we recruit and our pay. Was it equitable across gender and race, years of experience? You guys came in and helped us solve so many incredible challenges. And through your leadership, we wrote a 2-year plan and a 5-year plan for how we were going to become and maintain the company that we want to be when it comes to DE&I. And so I was just so inspired by you. Luna led a listening session with all of our employees, which is not easy to do. And we were talking about some pretty heavy topics. And I think you can sometimes get really uncomfortable in those conversations. And you really just rose up and, you know, you poked fun at that comfortability a little bit. And you created this like warm, safe space for, you know, 60, 70 people who are coming with such different lived experiences to have these conversations. And I will be forever grateful for that. And I know you've touched so many people and so many organizations. So I'm excited for you to share a lot of that perspective with our listeners today.
Well, I really appreciate that so much, Ashley, and just like hearing about how that experience was for you was great. I think I'm gonna start by shouting out Nicole Armstrong and Eloquate and Queen City Certified, who really is like the genius behind this Eloquate certification process that I've been collaborating with since I think 2017, 2018. It's been 5 years now. And so I'm so glad to hear that experience was great. And I think so much of what I hold is the power of collaboration and the power of working with partners like Nicole Armstrong with Eloquate to hold, uh, she holds so much of the policy piece,
Yeah.
and I like to hold the feeling piece.
Yes.
And you literally can't do it all as much as I would love to. You can't. And so I'm so grateful to be working collaboratively where people can hold different parts of this very complex, very holistic DEI work to make sure that organizations can move forward on their journey in a way that feels really good, right? That feels, it may not feel like peaches and cream all the time, but if you're building community along the way, if you're creating spaces where people can be real with each other and see each other as human beings, that's the main thing I'm trying to do at the end of the day, right? Is to help people build connections so we can create more like connected communities. Like that's it. It's really that simple.
Game over.
But I can't do that alone.
Right.
So
Right. Well, and it takes both, you know, because I think the emotion side, it's important. It's important to unlock those emotions and do a lot of that education, which is really what you did at the end of the day. You guided us through some pretty spectacular education. But then as an agency owner, we have to have the policies in place to make sure that everybody is feeling supported with all of those wraparound services.
100%. Yeah, that's exactly
All
it.
right. So now I have a confession I have to make. Okay. So we'll go ahead and pull up the deck now. But I, a few years ago, dressed my daughter up as Ariel for Halloween. And I just got to show this to you. I dyed her. She is adorable, right? I dyed her hair red. It was only supposed to be temporary. It lasted like 6 months. Huge mom fail. But it struck me. So I'm listening to this HBO special of you, and you are on stage doing this beautiful comedic bit about Disney princesses, in particular, the Little Mermaid. And I am laying there just like belly laughing at your description of the Little Mermaid, because I had never thought of it like that, right? So we've got this like unbelievable character in Ursula who is, she's not celebrated the way that she needs to be. You know, she's kind of delegated to the bottom of the ocean. She's one of the only characters of color. And then we've got King Triton at the top of the ocean ruling the world. And this very privileged princess who wants to completely change her identity for a man that she met 15 minutes ago. And I thought in that moment, that's what's so special about Luna. In the matter of like 3 minutes, you took a story that I've known from my childhood, that I have celebrated with my children, and you gave me a totally different perspective. And you taught me something in that moment about racism, about social injustices, about owning your identity and who you are, the importance of having a community. And just like that, I thought, you know what? Like this year, she's going to be Ursula, or she's going to be a different character, because those characters have to be celebrated too. And I just really commend you on that. And I think that's just, it really at the core of the value that you bring to everybody that you meet.
Oh my God, that is, first of all, what an adorable child that I'm looking at right now.
Thanks.
So sweet. Yeah, so firstly, thank you so much for that. I just want to be clear that I did write that joke way before the updated
Yes, I know.
Dis- Disney one. And I think that so often what I tell people, like what I think the key ingredient to Joy Channel is that we speak in a way that people can hear, often using story and allegory. And a lot of that is things that I learned as a comedian, like how to talk about something as a comedian where you're not like lecturing folks, but you're just like taking an idea and flipping it on its head. And I think that's how people learn. So I love that listening to that joke shifted things in you. And I think really truly at the heart of it is poking at these like this binary idea that we have in society at the root, right?
Hmm.
Of like this either or,
Hmm.
like, are you a villain or are you a princess? Are you a victim or are you the hero? Like it's
Hmm.
like we have these very binary ideas already, right? And then on top of that, who is seen as good or as safe is coded based on like all of the different things that we get in society. And I am the biggest Little Mermaid fan. Like I grew up listening to it. I was trying to dress like Little Mermaid. I was at the movie theaters watching the new one. And there was a point in time when I looked back and I was like, Ariel was really spoiled.
Amen.
Wow, she was really gonna just change her identity for a dude? Like, why is that okay? Like, actually, Ursula did tell her not to do that. Like, why was that the thing that I wanted to be like?
Yeah,
So it was a different perspective for me. But yeah, thank you for that.
I love that. All right, are you ready to get into the game board?
I am ready. I love a game board. Ew.
Okay, all right. So we've got 12 questions up here, and the power is in your hands. So you pick your favorite number,
Oh, my favorite number?
or any number, really.
Pressure. Okay, I'm gonna go with two.
All right, number two. In addition to your work with the Joy Channel, you're a multifaceted creative talent. You're a stand up comedian, and your band, The Moon and the Man, has been dubbed the new Sonny and Cher. What tips do you have for listeners who struggle to find the capacity for all of their creative hobbies?
Well, number one tip is one thing I want to name is that capacity shifts. My capacity shifts even throughout the year. And I find that I'm a very seasonal person. Like I'm like very tuned into how the seasons affect me, especially
Mhm.
living in the Midwest. I'm like winter, I'm slowing down. Spring, I'm ramping up, and I kind of like noticed that the past few years. And so I think that I think there's this idea that if we want to do something, we have to do it all the time, or we have to do it alongside everything. And there are times when I'm in a season where I could focus more on my music, and there are times when I'm in a season where that has to take a step back, and I'm okay with that. And so I think I just want to name that for folks who are just like, how do I do other things? It's just like, maybe just start with thinking about it like, what can I do this season that I'm able to like bring into my life instead of thinking it has to be something forever or year round or whatever. Just like allow yourself to play. Allow
Mm.
yourself to play.
Yes, I love that. Like giving yourself permission to be part time or, when the time is right with a lot of those passions. That's great. You often think in terms of like all in, right? If I'm going to
Mhm.
cook, I have to be all in, but you really don't. You can make space for all of those things that give you that fuel and passion. I love that.
Yeah.
Seasons. Nice. Okay, let's go back to the game board.
Back to the board. I get to pick the questions. Oh my gosh. Let's go with five.
Okay, number 5. So I'm a big believer that feedback is a gift, right? You give it like it's a gift and you receive it like it's a gift. And when it's done well, it can make a huge impact in you personally, professionally. So I'm curious. I know you're a very public figure, so you probably get lots of feedback. Has there ever been a piece of feedback in your career that maybe wasn't super positive, like the worst feedback ever you've gotten? And how do you react in the moment? And then any advice for like how you process that and come out on the other side?
Yeah. So When I saw this question, especially worst advice, I thought of like advice from my parents. So it turned out to be bad advice. But thinking about feedback, feedback is really complex when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion. When I'm doing a training, when I'm like trying to move folks and understanding their biases, because a lot of the times the feedback might be like, well, it might be more related to them than to me. But one time I did get a piece of feedback. I've gotten two pieces of feedback with Joy Channel, negative feedback, I would say, generally. And like normally, I would say our feedback is great. Like folks love working with us. People really appreciate our vibe. But sometimes people don't. And they might say, I felt like Luna was too playful. I've gotten that feedback. And then there's times when I've done a training with our team, and the best way to describe our team, depending on like your generation, if you remember like the Mickey Mouse Club, like how they come out and like, hey, like that's just our natural energy. We truly enjoy being that. But
I'm here for it.
sometimes, and we try to meet people where they're at, or sometimes we try to be like, okay, like what's our energy level, how we're going to come in. We can't come in like super Mickey Mouse because it might be off-putting for people. But sometimes people will react, or this is 2 out of like 200, but it stuck with me, right? Of like, is this real? Like, are y'all truly this connected and fun? Or like what's happening? And so I think in both of those pieces of feedback of like, I play too much, or like, oh, this team was like really playful and joyous, I'm like, that may be hard for you. It may be hard if you have a preconceived notion of what moving forward and equity is. And if we don't meet that, then you're like, I'm not doing it right. So I totally get that. And at the end of the day, I am the person who has to talk about racism every day, not only as a Black woman, but as someone doing this work. I'm the person sitting with like classism and all of the anti-LGBTQ attacks that I'm personally experiencing, that organizations I'm working with are experiencing. I'm the person who has to sit through and support organizations move through reproductive justice. And I care about my team, and we are working in a way that is sustainable for us. And we are trying to have conversations that are sustainable for folks that come into a space and have their own things to hold. And so totally understand that feedback. We may not be the people for you, and I may not be the person for you if you are like, I want someone who comes in and won't smile. I'm not for you. Right. Like, find someone like that,
I love that perspective when you can be just so confident in who you are and the value that you bring, that you can say, you know what, it's okay. I don't have to be for everybody. And when you get to that place in your career, and even just like your own internal idea of who you are, I think is really powerful.
Honestly, that nugget, I don't have to be for everyone, is something that has been growing more and more and like inside of me. And I think, just as someone who socializes as a woman, like that is something to unlearn.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Do you find that do you hold on to the negativity more than the positivity? I do. Like I would love, if somebody gives me some negative feedback, I can remember it. I remember where I was and what I was wearing, and if the lights were up or down, and the good feedback, I do remember it, but it doesn't seem to like stick with me as much.
Yeah, I would say, words of affirmation are my love language.
Got it. Yes.
I would say one of my
too.
primary love languages. So I do remember the positive feedback, and it kind of keeps me, I don't want to say it keeps me going, but it is something when people share, like how you shared with me in the beginning, like that's going to stick with me way longer and way more than like someone saying I play too much.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can just brush it off.
That's the thing
go.
I'm going to sit with and hold. But I also think it's because of words of affirmation being so strong for me. And I just like orient, like myself around like wanting to get a positive feedback loop, for better or for worse.
I love that. Good. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, 8. Let's go 8.
Number 8. So, people have said that it's dangerous to be a comedian right now, but your motto is first I'll make you laugh and then I'll make you think. Talk to us a little bit about humor is actually good for conversations around inclusivity.
Well, first, I am just like, ooh, I'm trying to, there's a soapbox right here that I do not want to stand on,
Okay.
but I might just like, if I can just put my pinky
Lean.
toe on it around, it's dangerous to be a comedian right now. Like, I feel like a lot of people who are saying that or naming that are folks who do not want to feel the consequences of their words.
Mhm.
It's always been dangerous to be someone who speaks the truth.
Mhm.
It's always been dangerous to be someone who goes against the stream. And the stream has been patriarchy. The stream has been uh, fat phobia. And so I feel like the stream has been transphobia. So a lot of the comedians that are just like, it's dangerous to be a comedian right now. It's because people are saying, you know what, we're tired of this, actually. These jokes are like, if I can be very real as a comedian, a lot of the jokes that folks are saying, like, I can't say anymore, they are hack.
Mm.
Number one. Let me tell you why they're hack.
Tell me.
Because if you're making a joke about a group of people that are experiencing marginalization, one, you're tapping into a stereotype that everyone holds, right?
Mhm.
So it's the laziest, not more, either everyone holds or has been faced with that they have to push away with. So it's the laziest thing in the world, actually, to make a joke rooted in stereotypes or rooting and punching down when people are already experiencing being punched down. It's
Mhm.
much harder to find a different angle. And I totally get it. Maybe being a comedian is hard. You know, maybe you've been resting on laurels of being a funny person and being popular, and you're trying to figure out, how do I get attention? And there's a growing chorus of people who are just like, we don't want this conversation anymore.
Mhm.
And so by saying the thing that is like really negative or punching down, you're going to get a chorus of people who have been within the streams of patriarchy who will champion you.
Mhm.
And so I get it. It's really easy to go to that, right?
Mhm.
And say that. So that's what I have to say about the whole comedian thing. About people saying being a comedian is dangerous. And I'll say at the end of the day, why humor is good for conversations around inclusivity is because when humor is rooted in your own personal experience, that is vulnerable, that is relatable, that is connecting, right? If I tell a joke around like one of the most universal things you can do, and forgive me, just like
Bring it.
pooping your pants, right?
Okay,
Like at
yes.
some point in time, either as a baby or as you know, our bodies shift and whatever, we're gonna do it, right?
Yep.
If I make a joke about that, that is relatable because folks are gonna be like, oh my God, like I've done that before. And it's hard for me to talk about because I feel shame.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not saying all of humor needs to be toilet humor, but what I'm saying is finding the nuggets where there is shame or there is vulnerability and sharing that and is powerful.
Mhm.
And that's what brings people together. But if you are trying to point out or poke fun of or point a finger at someone else to shame someone else, that is lazy. And that's just,
Fact.
uncreative comedy.
Good. Thank you for that lesson. Comedians, listen up.
Comedians, I'll let you know.
That's right. That's right. All right. Back to the game board.
Okay. I'll step off the soapbox.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Okay. 6. Let's go to number 6.
Okay, so I read that you have said that drag queens and burlesque dancers were the first to teach you equitable business practices. Tell me so much more about this.
I love that. Thank you for asking me this question. So, I've been a professional for almost 20 years now, and working probably longer than that. Who knows? I don't
We're
believe in
not counting.
time like
Yeah.
Mariah Carey. So at a certain point, I'm just going to be like, what is time? But all of that to say, I've worked in so many different industries, and I've been working in nonprofit industries since I was in college, like as a mentor and all of these things. And in those spaces, so often I hear in like nonprofit industries, like folks espouse things like we believe in equity, we believe in inclusion, da 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 da. However, my experiences as a comedian, especially starting early in San Francisco, where like I did a lot of comedy shows, and then San Francisco is such a powerful, beautiful, like performer creative scene where like independent shows really thrive. So as a comedian, I was able to do comedy shows, perform. I was able to perform every night. Sometimes I would be doing stand-up comedy. Sometimes that would be like drag queens would do like shows and they invite comedians to be on, or burlesque dancers would put on shows and then comedians would be a part of that. So I was part of this very, very connected community of performers. And what I found was in comedy shows, there would be a lack of transparency around like, sometimes what even the rate may be or blah, 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 or just in different spaces, there might be like a lack of transparency. But it was when I would do a drag queen show and a burlesque show, nobody would ever approach me about anything without saying, hey, we want you to do 15 minutes. The rate is $200. You would have to come at this point in time and leave at that point in time. We are collectively trying to build for this. This is how much. I mean, sometimes it wouldn't be the transparency of knowing how much the whole show is taking in, but sometimes it would.
Mm-hmm.
And that level of transparency is something I rarely see. It's even from businesses who dub themselves to be equitable. And instead, and then I think even the practice of like, what's your rate versus this is the rate that we have to pay performers is two different practices, right? And I think I always feel much better. And I, as founder and leader of Joy Channel, try to operate in the way of like, we looked at the budget, this is the rate we have, and that's the rate we have. Does that work with you? Yes. If not, then when we'll wait till we can find a way to do something better. But this is the rate. And I think that I've seen drag queens and burlesque dancers hold that and model that way more organically than anyone else. And not anyone else, but yeah, I would actually say anyone else than any other spaces I've seen. And I think it's often being rooted and understanding what it's like to need to have to like put so much money into your craft and need compensation in order to continue to do it. And so in those spaces, there was never an assumption that I would do something for free or for exposure. And it was never about like exploiting me. It was always about like, how do we bring you on to build something else? And so I just want to shout out drag queens and burlesque dancers for teaching me that. I just really appreciate that.
That's great. How do you, I have so many thoughts running through my head, like as a business owner, when it comes to that kind of transparency with our employees. And I know one of the things that we did was the pay equity audit to make sure there was no discrepancies, but taking it even a step further, I know the ad industry is calling for being transparent about your salary bands and making sure people know how much a job description is worth and putting the salary into the job description. That all seems like so easy to do. What is holding companies back, or what are you hearing when it comes to stuff like that?
Yeah, I think a lot of things. One, I think fear. I mean, that's a very easy thing to say, but I think the fear of like, what happens if we're transparent is holding a lot of people back. Secondly, as a business owner, like Joy Channel's been around for 2 years. We are actually in a process, and we are a consultancy, so it's a little bit different than salary. But even as a consultancy, I'm just like, how do we have independent contractors build equity? How do we have folks like have clear transparency around like what are we doing and what are our rates and all of that? And I think part of that is the messiness of it all. Like, I think sometimes it takes a while to kind of untangle what have we inherited as business owners that were like best practices that we need to let go. What is how do we compensate for the labor, and understanding that there are different types of labor that people do at different times
Mhm.
that might be going on within one role. Like it is a very complex like equation that has to deal with a lot of different things that takes a lot of time to do. And so that work is hard. It takes transparency, it takes like communication, it takes trust. And trust is a really hard thing to build. And so I think like the messiness of it is really what incorporates the fear. And I think it would be so much easier as a business owner to say, I'm not doing this. This is the thing. I'm going to do it in the way that I feel comfortable with. That would be easy. But similar to the comedy thing, what's easy
Mhm.
isn't necessarily what's best, right? Especially as we are moving in a society where our 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 labor is fastly being adapted by AI machines. And so it's just like AI machines, but AI. And so
Totally.
like what is labor is a question
Yeah.
we are like sitting with right now as a society. So it makes this equation even more complicated right now. And I think it's okay to give ourselves grace that we are trying and we are having these conversations, but we still need to have them, right? And so I commend any organization that's willing to step into the mess, and the folks that are willing to move forward with transparency, because I think they're pots that we can be sharing better,
Mhm.
and we need to share them. So
I love that. Thank you.
yeah.
All right, back to the game board.
Great question. Great question. Ashley, your questions.
Yay.
Okay, let's go 4.
Number 4. Okay, so if you've read, well, really any news trade publication, or maybe even turned on any news channel, you probably know that this year has been pretty epic in terms of pride failures, in celebrating pride, celebrating that community. Two that just come to mind, Target and Bud Light, have kind of been under the microscope. I'm really curious your perspective on this, and just any advice you would give to brands, maybe even considering talking about pride, or partnering with those kind of communities, and maybe somebody who is starting to get some backlash. Would you give them any advice?
Oh, so I love this question. I've done some work. Joy Channel has been partnering with Newfangled, which is a creative agency based out of Boston, to do work on a series called Nothing About Us Without Us, specifically for this.
Mm.
And so we did a kind of a whole conversation and series around like what could brands learn about pride, right? And so the first thing that I would say is make sure that when brands are creating content for pride, for LGBTQ folks, um, firstly, why? Why are you doing it?
Yep.
Are you doing it to try to get attention? Are you doing it because you understand that as a company, you have power, right? And that LGBTQ folks are being faced with so much backlash and all of these anti-trans laws, and all of the like there's so much fear
Mhm.
in the bodies of queer folks in the United States right now. And are you stepping up as a brand to say, we support you, we got you, or are you trying to make a buck? That's the first question.
Mhm. Man.
And if you're trying to make a buck, well, I invite that for that to be the understanding of what you're trying to do. And the best way to make a buck as a business, if that's what you're trying to do, is to actually hire LGBTQ folks to create that content, to do all of that, to have those conversations, right? And I think that regardless of what the way I'm saying it is this is because regardless of what the goal is, I want the ends to be the same, which is
Yes.
for LGBTQ folks to not just get representation, but to get the power of a business standing beside them and saying, we stand beside you. Where the biggest thing with this backlash of like brands who are kind of wavering is like, if you're wavering, you're not meeting either goal. You're not going to meet the goal of like earning the clientele of LGBTQ folks, and you're not going to meet the goal if it was altruistic and like really standing behind a community who's experiencing so much targeting. So what are you trying to do? Like
Yeah,
wavering is not going to meet that goal, whatever it may be. So once you make that decision, you need to stand in it.
that's right. I mean, Bud Light in particular, I feel like, wow, like, 24 hours, like just you switched from one side to the other side and they were just so confused. And it's like, well, you stand for nobody. So I was in Kroger, the big grocery chain here in Cincinnati, and like all the beer was empty, and then Bud Light just fully effaced. I mean, just cases and cases and cases of Bud Light, and then there was a $12 rebate if you bought a case of Bud Light. I'm like, you can't even give it away. So yeah.
There was a $12 rebate
Yes.
if you bought a case of.
Yes. That's how
Wow.
important decisions like this are. I mean, they went from the number one beer in America and now they are no longer. I think Modelo just took the top spot. And so you think, these types of conversations should be happening. I don't know why they're not and how it even gets to this point, but you're right. It takes that commitment, and then don't waver, stand up, bring them in, have them be part of the decision-making process. And you can avoid a lot of this bullshit, right?
100%. Yeah.
Ugh.
And the thing is, people are going to experience backlash, right? If you're, again, let's talk about that stream. That lets you know where the stream was. The stream was rooted in like, anti-trans sentiments and anti-LGBTQ sentiments. So if you're going against that stream, you're going to experience backlash. And that's part of the bravery of standing up. But it's part of, it's kind of like, so I was very comforted when Nike struck a deal with Colin Kaepernick, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And it wasn't because I felt like Nike was rooted in principles of equity and anti-racism. It was because I said, Nike must have looked at the numbers and looked at the population and said, okay, this seems like a risk right now, but we are looking where this population is growing, and look at the folks who are making up of our country, and look at the conversations that are being had. This is an investment in our brand for the future, is what I'm assuming the conversations they had. And I would say similar to like brands who are like kind of thinking they want to stand with LGBTQ people, but maybe not. Like the population of folks who are identifying as LGBTQ plus is growing ever so. And it's not growing because anything's shifting in how people are being born. It's growing because the conversations we're having, the safety that is being experienced, the representation that is being seen, is letting people know it's okay to be who you are. And so if I were a big brand, I would be looking at the numbers saying like, this population is growing and it's going to change sooner or later. So we might as well stand in it now and support the folks that need the support now, so we can earn their clientele, right? But I'm not the CEO of Bud Light, so
Yeah, maybe they'll call you though. Can consult.
Don't call me.
All right, let's go back to the game board. I think we have time for a couple more. What do you think?
Okay, I think so too. This has been delightful. Let's go 9.
Okay, that's my favorite number. Okay, so I've also heard you say that there's a difference between performing and practicing equity. So for all of the companies and business owners out there that are listening, what are 3 ways companies can put it into practice?
I'm going to give you one because I think
All
that
right.
is,
We only need one.
I think sometimes even questions like that where we're like, we need to do, it's rooted in like optics. And I think the one question that I would have folks reflect on to see if they're like tapping into the performance or the practicing of equity is like optics. Are you more interested in how you are being viewed? If your first question is, what will they say? How should we be viewed? What will people think? Then that's an indication that you are more rooted into the performing of equity. If your questions that are driving you internally are like, how can we create a better environment for all of our team and our staff? How can we, shift culture? Then that lets you know that you are tapped into the practice of equity, because it's going to be an ongoing questions that you will have to sit with and wrestle with, and there may not be clarity.
Mm-hmm.
There may be, and there will be, a lot of mistakes along the way. And so the space of practicing is the space of being open to new insights coming in and being honest about there are things we don't know and we're still trying to figure out, right? So I think that's just one key that will help folks understand whether or not you are trying to perform it or whether you're practicing it. And that's the most important thing that anyone needs to know right now.
Yeah, that's an incredible filter. And I think you can almost self-filter yourself if you're sitting there wondering and kind of see where you're at. If somebody is more on the performance side, any advice to them? Because obviously that's not sustainable. You're gonna have to put some of this into practice eventually.
Yeah, my loving advice is you're not that good of an actor. Like and I think this is the feedback, and this is what so often folks will be like, oh, Black Twitter got up in arms around this, or, we're getting all this backlash about this. And so often it's because we are seeing through the performance,
Mhm.
and we're just like, this is a performance. If you're saying, as an organization, we value diversity, equity, inclusion, and all of your leadership is
Yep.
not diverse, just white, then that's letting us know that it's a performance, and some people, maybe I'm not going to necessarily call you out because I got other things to do, but some people will be like, actor, this is a performance, and I was hoping for something real.
Mhm.
So I think just knowing that you are not fooling anyone is what you need to know if you're rooted in performance, and that the more authentic you are, the more folks say, like, you know what, actually, I don't know. The more you're actually going to bring people to your side and who will root for you and support you and being like, oh, it's okay that you don't know. Let's get you the support that you need to know, right? And let's not put the work of you not knowing on the people who are experiencing marginalization the most, right? That's the second part. If you don't know, like, it's just like, I don't know, I don't know what it's like to be, let's say you're part of Joy Channel, Ashley, and I'm not a parent, right? So I'm creating all of these policies and stuff like that for Joy Channel that are very, like, non-friendly to parents. It is not one, I can't say, well, I don't know what it's like to be a parent, so I just don't know. And I can't put the work on you to teach me. I have to also say, like, oh, this is an awareness gap I have. Let me get support and creating policies that support parents, because it would be extra work on Ashley as a working parent to also inform me how to do my policies to make them better for her while she has a whole job that you're doing, right? And so I so often think the work of folks who are trying to practice equity or anti-racism is actually often putting the work on people experiencing marginalization the most to do that work for them. But you can sit in your I don't know, but that means you have to reach out for help.
Really good advice. Thank you. All right, let's do one more.
Okay, yes, okay. One more. Let's go 10.
Okay, number 10. So as a leader of a team, you've made it a focus to be more candid about what you're holding and your energy levels, which we talked about at the top of the podcast. So I am just dying to know, like, what are some really practical ways you're doing that? Like, how are you actually letting your team know the mind state you're in, the emotion that you're feeling in the moment? And what impact has that had on your team, your productivity, your chemistry and relationships together? And how can we start doing it more with our teams?
Yeah, so I will speak for myself first before I shift to how other folks can do that with their team. So one, I'll just want to name that Joy Channel is a collective of folks that are experienced mentors, facilitators, like coaches, everybody on our team has been sitting with like facilitation skills and like holding emotional labor in one way or another for a very long time. And so the way that we communicate as a team is going to inherently be more vulnerable because our work is emotionally labor than the way that I would, recommend like a non-emotional labor organization communicating with each
A
other.
bunch of
So I just want
lawyers.
to name that because I'm very candid. I think the number one thing that is something that I'm always trying to learn is how to sit and scan for myself, because I have this internal desire to always be on and always get it done and always be able to hold everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you a case in point of yesterday. I was going to do a training with an organization around feedback, but I had I had just was trying to fly into Chicago the day before, and that flight got deplaned, and so I had to flew in the day of, and my body was still jittery from like all of this turbulence and stuff. And so I had shared that with a team member. I was just like, I think I'm good to go, but I'm like, I am holding all of this stuff. And my colleague Alice, who's the director of energy, is her title, was just like, I just want to reflect back to you. You're saying this, but I'm seeing your own nervous system, and maybe we can just pause. Like maybe we can pause. And so I have to say that, I just kind of like we're in the practice of sharing what happened and where we are, but so often the practice of knowing what my energy level is something that I receive help from my team and like talking through, and being able to be like, do you really think that you can hold a training of like 60 people right now? Your body's still shaking. You just got off the plane.
Yeah.
You're
Let's
like
take a
scared.
minute.
Do you really think you can do that? And it's just like, yeah, I want to do it, but you're right, I can't. And so I think for times when it's hard for me to know what I'm holding, folks around me can help me reflect back to me around that. And then when I do know, I just start by being like, hey, this is what I'm holding. And especially in times when there's like really rough news about an experience where like Black person was targeted in a hate crime, or just any POC was targeted, or like there's, gun violence. I will know that will affect me, and I will share that like, hey, I'm affected by the world around me right now, and I need a moment, and I need to figure out how we can build together. And people respond to that by kind of sharing where they are too. And it builds trust, it builds honesty, it builds a space where people know that they can be human, which at the end of the day is, again, I started by saying that, I'm going to end by saying at the end of the day, I'm trying to create spaces where people can know it's okay to be human. Many of us are working from home. And what does that mean when you're working from home? That means you're living at work. And so we have to be aware that like we can no longer compartmentalize ourselves in this way that we were taught to by business. We are literally working from home sometimes. We're literally parenting in the middle of work. Like we're literally experiencing record level climate disaster, political turmoil, pandemics. It's okay to be human.
Yeah.
We got to be gentle with ourselves, and we got to create environments where we're able to be real humans with each other, or else it's going to eat us all up and it won't be good.
Yeah. And we can't show up as our best self.
Exactly. Exactly.
Luna, this was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. For any of our listeners who want to contact you, what's the best way to find you?
So I am at luna@joychannel.org. I'm really excited that our team is growing, and you will be able to reach out to info@joychannel to connect with all of the folks and all of the work that we are doing. So just give us a line. You can follow us on Instagram at Find Your Joy Channel. And we are on LinkedIn as well. So whatever platform you use, we're out there. Really easy to find. Lots of pink colors will let you know that you're in the right spot.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.